So everybody is talking about the huge rollback in the United Kingdom. That's right, England's done with all of it. No more masks, no more mandates, no more vaccine passports. They are done with all of it.
Some of the things they're doing in the UK, now that they're not doing anymore, they're ending mandated face masks, masks in school, that's gone. Work from home advisories, nope. Mandatory passports to get into nightclubs and large events. Legal requirement to self-isolate, no. They're getting back to normal. We should follow this.
Why are they doing this? One of the doctors that I watch here on YouTube is Dr. John Campbell. He is a doctor. He is a viral expert, and he is based in England. He's in the UK, and he has been on top of this. He was absolutely the first one to declare that Omicron was literally now the signifying factor that we are in an endemic. And yes, there is a variant of Omicron, and it is virtually, as the English would say, nothing. It's just nothing. We really are at the end of this thing. And that's one reason that England is rolling everything back. But there's another reason. There's another reason. There is pushback from their citizens, has been. And that pushback is growing. And that pushback is growing here in the U.S. I mean, liberals and conservatives are joining forces on this. And when I say liberals, I'm not talking about the libloons in like Washington, D.C. that you know, I'm talking about the actual progressive liberals, the people who really do believe in radical things like freedom of speech. They're joining force saying enough. This populism is and the more we get suppressed and the more we get neutered and censored, the more it's actually the movement's growing. And it's exciting to watch. And that's the same thing is happening in England. But something else happened. Did you know in England they have a Freedom of Information Act just like we do here in the U.S.? Well, they do. And people wanted to know what's the real death toll? Now, I'm doing this off the top of my head, so forgive me. I believe the UK's total deaths for the virus is officially reported at 139,000. Now again, England, Wales, smaller obviously than the United States, so their numbers are going to be much less. But there's a direct parallel here, and Dr. John Campbell found it. A Freedom of Information request. So people wanted to know how many people died just of COVID. We've been asking that in the U.S. for 2 years. You know, people who had, you know, comorbidities and, you know, already had heart disease, already were cancer, you know, had whatever, and then they die, and because they tested positive for COVID, they were listed as a COVID death. Did they die from COVID or with COVID? Dr. Fauci, you helped us get some answers on hospitalizations. Could you go the rest of the way, pal, and let us really know what's going on with the death toll? Because after all, our official death toll is reported like 800,000, which means 600,000 people died on Joe Biden's watch. And by his own definition, he's not fit to be president if you hold Joe Biden to the same standard he held Donald Trump to when it was 200,000 under the Trump administration. So at some point, we're going to start getting a correction on the death count. And I think they already know what the real numbers are. And I think those real numbers are so low, they are terrified what the American people are going to do when they find out. Because in England, remember, it's like 139,000 reported deaths of coronavirus. But Dr. John Campbell found a Freedom of Information request that their media over there just never failed to cover, despite the fact this report has been out for over a month. And the difference between the reported deaths and the actual deaths of people dying strictly and solely from COVID, night and day.
Now, this is from a Freedom of Information request. Deaths from COVID-19 with no other underlying cause. In other words, people that were otherwise healthy, that don't have heart disease, that don't have lung disease, that don't have diabetes, and yet died of COVID-19. Deaths registered from 2020 and 2021. So death registrations for 2020 and 2021. For deaths where COVID-19 was listed as the underlying cause of death, as the underlying cause, but had no other pre-existing condition recorded on the death certificate for England and Wales. So this is just England and Wales. So what we're saying is, as of the end of September, there's 17371 deaths where COVID was the only attributable cause. Now, what's the official government data saying there? Within 28 days of a positive test, up to the end of September, 137,133 people died. And the difference there is a factor of 7.9. So the official figures were pretty well 8 times higher than those where COVID-19 was the only attributable cause of death.
Nearly 140,000 reported deaths. That's the official number. And it turns out to be 17,000 of just the virus. It's 8 times higher than the official number. So, we understand that their numbers are different than the United States numbers. Can we mathematically guess that the reported 800,000 is 8 times higher than the actual number of those who died strictly and solely just from the virus? Because that's about how many people die of the flu every year. Heart disease, cancer. See, the telltale numbers, when you look at the reported deaths for a year, since the pandemic began, and we're told about these astronomical numbers of people dying and on ventilators, and we're using tractor trailers to store the dead bodies, all this hogwash that we hear about, but nobody's ever actually seen. And yet, for the first year of the pandemic, when supposedly 200,000 people died just of coronavirus, that's what we were told. He died under the Trump administration. 200,000 in the Trump administration from COVID, and COVID was this brand new thing we had never seen before. But how come the total deaths for the year 2020 are only about 20,000 more deaths than the year before? I thought if this virus is a brand new thing, wouldn't we've had 200,000 more deaths than the year before? Because all of a sudden people were not dying of pneumonia or the regular flu anymore. That's even doctors at the Mayo Clinic have said, hey, what happened to the pneumonia and flu deaths? And the CDC is going, hamana, 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 hamana. You starting to get this? I know my audience gets it. I'm talking about some of you that have just tuned in here for the first time. You getting this? And I love this doctor from England. He's got this drive. When he first reported on Omicron and he talked about the serious symptoms, the way he looked in the camera, you knew absolutely he was saying what he had to say to not get in trouble with YouTube, but his facial expressions and the way he rolled his eyes, he was like, this is a cold. This is a cold. This is a cold. And the way he's reporting this, he's been masterful at this. Actual death by COVID only versus the official number. And the official number is 8 times higher than the actual number. You think maybe that might apply here too? As always, thank you so much for watching. Please share this. Help me get the word out that we're here. You know that they crank down on the algorithm here, so nobody can come on here into the search engine, just find me. They either have to know about me, stumble upon me accidentally, or somebody like you needs to tell your friends, share a link, let them know we're here. Thank you.